Hello, Mr. Burrell here. We're in Unit 10. We're introducing trigonometry, kind of getting us rolling with trigonometry because a lot of the future units we do this trimester will be on trigonometry. We just finished talking about the difference between radians and degrees as two different ways to measure angles. So today, with both of those, in degrees and in radians, we're going to practice drawing those angles, and we're going to talk about coterminal angles, what coterminal angles are. So by the end of this lesson, this is what I hope you're able to do. Draw a given angle in standard position. I'll talk about what that means. Identify if two angles are coterminal. We'll talk about what that means. And find a coterminal angle for a given angle within a given range. So basically we're talking about drawing angles in standard position and talking about coterminal angles, what they are, how we find them. Okay. So you might remember this image right here from the last video, from the last lesson. It had this circle, and I had degree measures going all the way around the circle. 30, 45, 60, 90, 120, etc., 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 etc. That's pretty familiar, hopefully, to us, how we draw these angles on a circle. Going this way, going all the way around the circle is 360 degrees. Halfway around the circle is 180 degrees. A quarter way around the circle is 90 degrees, etc., etc. So in trigonometry, we draw angles in a specific way called standard position using an x and a y axis. So I have my x and y axis here. And for example, if I were to, let me get this. If I were to put like a clock face on here, I start drawing my angles right here on the x-axis, or in other words, on this little clock where it's 3 o'clock. Positive angles go counterclockwise, or this way, which is why I had like right here, this was 45 degrees. Or if I drew this one right here, this one right here would be like 135 degrees. Or if I drew this one right here, this one right here would be 270 degrees. So whenever I have a positive angle, I start from this horizontal line over here on the 3 o'clock on the clock measurement here, and I go counterclockwise. If I'm measuring a negative angle, I'm going to go the reverse direction, or clockwise. So if I wanted to go negative 90 degrees, this is negative 90 degrees. Or if I wanted to go negative 180 degrees, I'd write this like this. This would be negative 180 degrees. So I draw this arrow right here to denote the direction that I'm going, and then I draw a line to represent what we're going to call the terminal side of the angle. So like if I have this angle that's 45 degrees, this line right here, this side is going to be called the terminal side of the angle, or in other words, where it stops. So where it terminates, where the angle stops, that's going to be called the terminal side of the angle. So that's how I draw these different types of angles if I had just been given an x and y axis. So this right here would be 45 degrees. That's how I draw that angle. Okay, so coterminal angles. I talked about how a terminal, when I talk about drawing an angle, the terminal side is where my angle stops, and the initial side is always this line right here where I start on the x-axis. Coterminal angles are angles who share the same initial side and terminal side. So for example, here on this picture, I have this angle right here that's 60 degrees. But you notice if I were to go in the negative direction, if I was to go negative 90, 180, negative 270, negative 300 degrees, I'd end up at the same place. So 60 degrees and negative 300 degrees are coterminal angles. Coterminal angles because they start and stop in the same place. They have the same initial side and the same terminal side. Notice right here, if I was to go all the way around the circle one time, 360 degrees, all the way around another 360 degrees, 360 plus 360 is 720. And then if I was to go 60 more, that would be 780 degrees. So that's also a coterminal angle. Most of the angles that you've previously discussed have been between like 0 and 360, or between 0 and 2 pi if we're talking in radians. So now when we start talking about all these different other types of angles, those are going to be called coterminal angles. Not all the angles that we're talking about can only be between 0 and 360. So one way to find coterminal angles, or determine if two angles are coterminal, you can draw the angles and compare them. So like if I were given, okay, a question such as, are 60 and 780 degrees coterminal angles? Well, you could draw them. Here's 60 degrees, and here's 780 degrees. In fact, they are coterminal. Another method you can use to determine if two angles are coterminal, or to determine if two angles have the same initial and terminal side, you can add or subtract 360 until the angle is between 0 and 360 degrees. So for example, if I have this 60 degree angle and I'm trying to determine if 780 degrees is coterminal, I can take, well, 780 is not between 0 and 360, so I'm going to subtract 360 from 780. 780 minus 360, 780 minus 360 is 420. That's still not between 0 and 360, so I subtract 360 degrees again, basically coming back an entire full circle. If I subtract 360 degrees, I get 60. So 780 and 60 are coterminal angles, because if I were to backtrack, or if I were to subtract 360 degrees, go 2 full circles back, then I'd get 60 degrees. What about negative 300 degrees? That's not between 0 and 360 either. But if I add negative 300 plus 360, I get 60 degrees. So I took this negative 300 degrees, added 360, added a full circle, so it was in the range of 0 to 360, and I got 60 degrees, which means that those two angles are coterminal. Basically, two of the same angles written in a different way. That's what coterminal angles are. Okay, so this is some similar problems as you might see on the homework or on a test. It says draw and then state if the given angles are coterminal. So, 115 degrees. Well, here's 90 degrees, so it's going to be a little bit more. It's going to be like right around here. Oh, geez. Right around here. That's how you would draw that angle. And I'm not going to be super critical on exactly where you draw these angles, but it for sure needs to be over here. Okay, so that's 115 degrees. Well, is negative 425 a coterminal angle with 115 degrees? Well, I'm going to add 360 to negative 425 because it's not in the range of 0 to 360. So I'm going to add negative 425 plus negative 425 plus 360, and I'm going to get negative 65. So negative 65 degrees. That's still not within the range of 0 to 360, so I'm going to add 360 again, and I'm going to get 295 degrees. Well, 295 degrees, here's 90, 180, 270. It's going to be somewhere over here. It's like on the complete opposite side. So 115 and negative 425 are not coterminal angles. They're not coterminal angles. You could also, if you wanted to, instead of converting it to a number between 0 and 360, negative 425, you could go negative 90, 180, 270, 360, and then keep going all the way around until you reach this same terminal side. But I personally think that the easiest way to determine if two angles are coterminal is this way. Add or subtract 360 from the number that's not in the range from 0 to 360, and see if you get the same angle here. Okay, how about radians? So there's a couple different ways that you can determine if two angles given in a radian measure are coterminal. First of all, you can convert them to degrees. So let's do that. We're going to use what we did in this last lesson. So 2 pi thirds converted to degrees, I multiply by 180 over pi. These pi's cancel. 180 times 2 thirds is 120. So this right here is 120 degrees. 8 pi thirds converted to degrees is 180 times 8 thirds, which is 480 degrees. Okay. So in degree measures, this is 120 degrees and 480 degrees. So let's test this out, see if they are coterminal angles. So 120 degrees, if I'm to draw that, this is 90. I need to go like 30 more right here-ish. Notice this is really close to where this angle is. This angle right here is 120 degrees. Okay, 480 degrees, well, that's outside of the range from 0 to 360. So I'm going to take 480 minus 360. Minus 360, and I get 120 degrees. So, if I were to go 360 and then add an additional 120, those angles are going to end up in the same spot. So, 2 pi thirds and 8 pi thirds are coterminal angles. These ones were not coterminal angles. These two over here are coterminal angles because they have the same initial side. They both started here, and they both ended here. So there's another way that I sometimes like to determine if two radian angle measures are coterminal. You don't have to do this, but let me show you. I talked about in the last video how I can identify radian measures by pretty easily by this third. So like this 2 pi thirds, I can identify that angle measure by thinking of the top and bottom half of the x and y axis to be split into thirds. So like here's 1 pi third, 2 pi third, 3 pi thirds, 4 pi thirds, 5 pi thirds, 6 pi thirds, 7 pi thirds, 8 pi thirds, 9 pi thirds, etc., 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 etc. So for example, this would be 2 pi thirds right there. So that right there would be 2 pi thirds. Here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pi thirds. So this was 8 pi thirds, and this was 2 pi thirds. So indeed they are coterminal angles because they start and end in the same place. So that's a way that sometimes you can think about it. I want to give you a couple tools in your toolbox, but probably the easiest and most straightforward way is to convert those radian measures into degrees and then determine if they are coterminal by subtracting or adding by 360 degrees. Okay, this is another example of a type of question you might see on homework or a quiz. It says, find a positive coterminal angle for each angle between 0 degrees and 360 degrees, or between 0 degrees and 2 pi. So for example, here I have negative 30 degrees. So that's not between 0 and 360 degrees, it's negative. So I'm going to go ahead and take negative 30 plus 360 degrees, and I get 330 degrees. Well, that's between 0 and 360, so that is a positive coterminal angle for negative 30 degrees. That's between 0 and 360. So 330, that's, let's see, this is 90, 180, 270. That's going to be like right here, 330 degrees. And indeed, if I were to go negative in the negative direction about 30 degrees, I'm going to end up in that same place, on that same terminal side. So those are coterminal angles. Okay, if I had given you a different range, maybe I wanted a coterminal angle that was between 360 degrees and 720 degrees. Then I'd just add 360 again. Then I'd get 690. 690 is also a coterminal angle. Maybe I'll add 360 again. That's also going to be a coterminal angle. I'm going to add 360 again. That's also going to be a coterminal angle. If I were to subtract 360 from negative 30, that would also be a coterminal angle, etc., etc., etc. So whenever trying to find a coterminal angle, you just add or subtract by 360 degrees. Okay, for this one, it's given to me in radians, so the answer I would want you to give me needs to be in radians. So let's convert this to degrees. 3 pi fourths times 180 over pi. 180 times 3 fourths. What is that? That's going to be 135 degrees. So 135 degrees is, this is like 90, 45. So this right here, that was a terrible line, I'm sorry. This right here is 135 degrees, or 3 pi fourths. Well, since 3 pi fourths, or 135 degrees, is already in this range, between 0 and 2 pi, 3/4 pi is between 0 and 2 pi, that's the only coterminal angle in that range. If I wanted to find another coterminal outside of that range, I would take 135 plus 360. So 135 degrees plus 360 degrees would be 495 degrees. Or in other words, that's if I were to go completely around the circle again, that would be 495 degrees. But if I gave you an angle that was in radian measure, I would want your answer to be in radian measure. So I'm going to take 495 degrees multiplied by pi divided by 180 in order to get my answer in radians. So 495 divided by 180 written as a fraction is 11 pi fourths, or 11/4 pi. So then my coterminal angle with 3 pi fourths would be 11 pi fourths. That's, again, if I had given you a different range here, if I wanted a coterminal angle between maybe 2 pi and 4 pi, or 4 pi and 6 pi, then I'd keep adding 360 degrees, or in other words, keep adding 2 pi. So if you were thinking of the other method of talking about radian measures, since this is 3 pi fourths, that means I'm going to split the top and bottom of my x and y axis into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So this is 1, 2, 3 pi fourths right there. 4 pi fourths, 5, 6, 7, 8 pi fourths, 9, 10, 11 pi fourths. So that's a coterminal angle. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 pi fourths would also be a coterminal angle, etc., etc., etc. So you can either convert a radian measure into degrees and find coterminal angles that way and then convert them back into radians, or you can use this method right here, whichever way you decide. Okay, so here's some questions off of your homework. Numbers 9, 10, 17, and 24 off your homework. I'm going to go through some of those so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect. So this says, find a coterminal angle between 0 degrees and 360 degrees, and then I'm going to draw those angles on the coordinate grid here. So negative 705 degrees, that is not between 0 and 360, it's negative, so I'm going to add 360. Negative 705 plus negative 705 plus 360 is negative 345. Still not between 0 and 360, so I'm going to add 360 again. And I'm going to get 15 degrees. So a coterminal angle with negative 705 degrees, but that is between 0 and 360, would be 15 degrees. So probably like right around there. 15 degrees right here. If I were to draw negative 705, that would be like negative 360, negative 720. Oh, negative 360, almost to negative 720, all the way back to here. Negative 360, negative 705. So this is a coterminal angle with negative 705, because they would start and end on the same terminal side here. Start on the initial side and end on this terminal side. Okay, 795 degrees, that's not between 0 and 360, so I'm going to subtract 360. 795 minus 360 is 435. Still not between 0 and 360, so I'm going to subtract 360 again, and I'm going to get 75 degrees. So 75 degrees, I don't know, that's going to be right around here. That's 75 degrees. If I was writing 795, this would be, let's see, 360, 720, and then an additional 75 degrees, that would be 795. So indeed, 795 and 75 degrees are two coterminal angles. This one, 75, meets kind of our criteria that I was given in the instruction, that is, it's between 0 and 360. Okay, let's try my radian measures. So again, first I'm going to go ahead and try to convert this into degrees. So negative 15 pi fourths multiplied by 180 over pi. 180 times negative 15 fourths is negative 675 degrees. Well, that's for sure not between 0 and 360. So I'm going to add 360 to that one. Negative 675 plus 360 is negative 315. Still not between 0 and 360, so I'm going to add 360 again. And I'm going to get 45 degrees. That's between 0 and 360, but my original question was in radians, so I need to convert this degree measure back to radians. 45 degrees multiplied by pi over 180, 45 divided by 180 written as a fraction, is 1/4 pi, or in other words, pi fourths. So 45 degrees or pi fourths would be right here. Pi fourths. Or if you were thinking in the other zone, I'll do that one real quickly on this example. If I wanted to split the top and bottom of my graph into fourths, this would be negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fourths. Negative 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yes, negative 15 fourths. So negative 15 fourths, pi fourths, and positive pi fourths indeed start and end in the same place. So those are coterminal angles. One more homework problem, we'll wrap this up. 17 pi 6, let's convert that to degrees. Multiply by 180 over pi. 180 times 17 sixths, after the pi's cancel, we get 510 degrees. That's not between 0 and 360, so I'm going to subtract 360 here. 510 minus 360 is 150. So here's 90 degrees, go like 60 more degrees. Right around there is my 150 degree angle. Or you could also go and follow the same pattern I did with the pi 6. You could split the top and bottom of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 into 6 parts and do it that way. Whichever you prefer, but if I were to convert this to degrees, right here is 150 degrees. And if I convert that back to radians, 150 degrees times pi over 180, 150 divided by 180, written as a fraction, is 5 pi sixths. 5 pi sixths. So this angle right here is 5 pi sixths. It is a coterminal angle with 17 pi sixths, meaning that they have the same initial and terminal side. So that's the end of this lesson. Hopefully now you're able to draw angles in standard position on an XY coordinate grid. Hopefully you're able to identify if two angles are coterminal, meaning they have the same initial and terminal sides. And just given any angle, hopefully you can find a coterminal angle for that angle within a given range. That's all I have for you. I hope that was helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did.